I am happy to welcome everybody to our first artist interview. I'm here with Andrew Nagengast from Great Falls Public Schools. Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself as an artist and what you do as an educator?
I'm one of the high school art teachers over at CM Russell High School. Currently, I'm teaching beginning art workshop and studio and graphic design and photography. Next year, I will add ceramics and sculpture to that list of classes that I'm teaching. And I graduated from Montana State University with my bachelor's in studio arts, focus in ceramics, and my BA in art education K-12. As an artist, I am a potter and atmospheric soda firings as my main focus.
Why did you choose clay and making pottery as your medium of choice?
It all started back in high school. I didn't follow a prototypical art path when I was in high school. I waited until my senior year to take my fine arts credit, which I now tell all of my students not to do because you may never know if you discover something that you really enjoy. I was sitting in art workshop at Great Falls High, and I had Jack Fisher, and we were building a tea set, a little miniature tea set, and he noticed that I was really just like, I was more focused when we were doing clay, and he pulled me aside one day and asked if I wanted to go to the ceramics class. And I said, sure, I'll try it. And Jack put me on the potter's wheel, and 4 months later, my parents bought me my own potter's wheel, and the rest is history. And I've been doing it for the last 19 years.
Does being an educator influence your art process or vice versa?
In my classroom, I learn as much from the kids as they learn from me, I feel. Three-dimensional work is all about the experience of using clay and using functional objects and cooking and drinking and using pouring objects and the conversations that can happen with using a functional piece of art. And how that relates with the kids is any new technique. Oh, hey guys, let's try this. And so we constantly are experimenting and playing and trying to learn, and then we discover, oh, that didn't work. Okay. And so it's an experimentation process, and I'm always interested in new technologies and drawing on iPads versus drawing on paper versus, how can everything kind of tie in together, along with how does 3D printing and 3D modeling morph into the clay world. The grant that I wrote and got two 3D printers that use clay instead of plastic have helped me explore that. And so we're doing some STEAM in the classroom using engineering ideas and 3D modeling. And it's a constant, ever changing aspect because I'm constantly trying to learn, and I'm constantly experimenting and going, okay, that worked. Let's try it again, but let's do it this way. And so I always call it kind of organized chaos when people ask me how my room is. You walk in and it does look like a crazy circus, but everyone's on task and everyone's focused, but everyone could be doing something completely different. And we could have 7 projects going. And it's fun.
So I kind of wanted to jump into some questions about your work directly as an artist. Is there anything that you can tell me about what are the inspirations or influences that may or may not directly affect the art that you make?
I go in cycles. I've always been very interested in the English slipware potters, even the North Carolina tradition potters, who were basically brought over the English tradition and settled in North Carolina. I sometimes will catch myself doing pieces that are very English, slipwear or English style. I've also been very influenced and very inspired by Korean and Japanese and Chinese wares. One of the pieces in the show was inspired by the Cycladic figures from ancient Greece on the islands of the Cyclades. I took that information and then I grew up with this little plaster guy called Oscar that my dad did in college, and I made my own Oscar, but using my influences. So it's like a hybrid of my dad's piece, ancient Greek, and then my own aesthetic. But then the functional pots are also representative of slip design and how slip can be used as texture versus, oh, what's going to happen to the mark if you wipe your hand through the slip. I go in these cycles of, I really want to focus on using slip as a textural element. And so then I'll make a series of work using just slip. And then I'll fire the work and maybe take a break and then kind of go, oh, I want to explore plates again. And then I'll spend 6 months making plates and experimenting with that and drawing on a flat functional surface. Or, oh, I want to explore jars, and so then I'll work on how lids fit and different types of lids. And then I kind of figure out like where I want to go and what's influencing me at that time, and how they all work together in an atmospheric kiln. I pull from ancient cultures and cultures from all over the world to be inspired. The world's very inspiring. I've also really liked adding digitally drawn images to the outside of my pots lately, or focusing in on geometric shapes and altering my pots to fit like a pentagon shape or square, and how those are going to affect the functionality of a piece. That's been kind of my exploration the last year and a half, is geometric shapes. Now I want to explore, okay, the geometric shapes, let's get some slip on these. Let's see what happens here. And just different clay bodies. I always go back and forth between porcelain and stoneware depending on where I'm going or what style I want to look or what aesthetic I want. An influence is very broad for me, but I have very specific kind of ideas that I've kind of based my own aesthetic around. It's all about experimentation.
Hearing you talk, there's a few terms that have come up, and slip is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone who might be watching that doesn't know what slip is, what is slip?
Slip is a mixture of clay and water. So you can mix it to be really, really thin to create a thin layer, or you can mix it to be thick and then it kind of gives a dollop. My wife and my sister refer to it as really heavy whipped cream. When I do my slip work, it can add some variation to the pieces, and you can wipe through it, you can draw through it. There's a lot that you can do with slip. English tradition, they would use different colored slip to decorate their pots. Like if you wanted a brown slip, you could add iron oxide. Or if you wanted a blue slip, you could add cobalt carbonate. And you could get these different colors. And it's just another way to decorate pieces besides glaze.
What is one piece of advice you would give to young people or aspiring artists?
One piece of advice is, I mean, if you really enjoy art and you feel like you can do it and you really have a passion for art, it's up to you to find your own voice. And it's more of a voice than it is about talent. If you're able to defend your work, make it. And Rick Pope always said, one of my professors at MSU always said, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. And once you overdo it, take one step back, and that's where you should reside. I always tell kids not to compare themselves to each other and to be able to talk about their own work in their own way versus, well, mine doesn't look as good as Johnny's. Well, that doesn't matter. It's what you can do. Let You make work and then let everyone else decide if it's good or not. If they decide it's not good, reinvent yourself. If you really have a passion for it, find a way. Some students really embrace it, some students don't. They still want to compare their work to other people instead of just believing in themselves and that they can do it. And that's one of my biggest things that I try to have my students understand is that you can do it. It's in your own way, though.
Is there anything else that you would like to say or is important to share that you would like included before we sign off?
I really enjoy this idea. Sometimes I don't think we get to express, like, we don't get asked those questions on a regular basis. It's really nice to talk about your process without getting cut off or having a short amount of time. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you talking about your process. So I'm excited to inform the world about the art that we're all making. So.
Exactly. It's going to be a great experience.